Hey everybody, it's Alex once again from the Remote Work Life podcast. And I have one of my podcasting heroes with me today, Pilar Orti. Pilar is a director of Virtual Not Distant. They help managers and teams adapt to a new way of working. And I've had Pilar as a guest on the podcast before. As I said, she's a hero of mine in terms of podcasting space. One of the first podcasts I ever started to listen to. So I will put the details in the show notes for you to listen to as well. But apart from that, Pilar is embedded in the world of remote work. She's a remote work expert, go-to thought leader in the area of remote work, especially when it comes to helping teams, helping managers. So Pilar, I want to thank you once again for coming back to the Remote Work Life podcast. Thank you for being here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Always good to speak to you. And the second time is, I'm really looking forward to see what we talk about today.
Me too. And I think last time we spoke, we were talking more about teams. You're giving advice in terms of how teams, especially the teams that were new to remote work, could transition and adapt to the world of remote work. And that's what you're all about. But I want to today find out more about you and what inspired you to be where you are today. And I just wondered, first and foremost, Pilar, could you just tell the audience about yourself and, where are you in the world now as well?
Well, physically, I'm in London, so that's good because that's my base. And I think that's important because I'm someone that has transitioned. So a transition sounds very linear, that still moves in a lot of professional roles and still in different industries. And I am now in flux. I am really wondering. I've taken this year to think about what's next. So I'm still doing a lot of what I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years and 20 years actually. But now I'm starting to wonder, where am I next? So what I've been doing, my professional life, I trained as an actress, run a theatre company, that is like previous life, and worked as a voiceover artist, which I still do some voiceover work. But what I've been doing over the last, say, 10 years is looking at corporate training and training in organizations. I started in leadership training around the 2010s or something. And I started to see that more and more organizations were using technology to run their teams. So basically, I could see more virtual teams, etc. So I started to look into that space, and I thought it was a very interesting space because it needed a lot of deliberate action. It needed teams and managers to really think about how they wanted to work together. And I thought that is very attractive. And a lot of people making a transition to using more remote work. So I thought, that's great. We can use it as a tool to stop and think and design new ways of working. And then the pandemic came and lots of people had to adopt remote work without thinking, without designing new ways of working. And those years were interesting, I'm sure, for you as well, for a lot of people in the remote space to just see stuff being adopted in whatever way was possible. It changed how I approached the work. I was like, whoa, what am I doing here? Talking to people in the middle of a pandemic about visible teamwork, which is my thing. And so it was an interesting time. And I podcast a lot, because I love talking and because I love having conversations about the work. So the show that you listen to, 21st Century Work Life, is my longest running show. And it really started because I wanted to have conversations with people who were doing things. It was more broadly in the 21st century, what work looked like. And as I saw that there was more remote work being adopted, I thought, well, actually, I could fill a whole podcast with just this. So it's been really great. And from that, I also have a podcast now about podcasting. I have a podcast about food with a friend of mine in Spanish. I have a management cafe still running now with a co-host. So podcasting, there's something there that's quite interesting as well. So yeah.
Very mixed background, but all
over the place.
But I mean, I can see all of the different, you mentioned linear, but there's very much a relationship between what you've done in the past in terms of the theatre-based work and the creative things that you're doing or were doing, AOL Time Warner, Forbidden Theatre Company, to the things that you're doing now. There's definitely a correlation. And I think, so you're doing voiceover work as well. And obviously voiceover is very much related to the audio landscape that you're in now. And you've got did you say 3 podcasts all in one go?
I am involved with 5 plus 1, I think. Plus 1 that I do a co-host for someone else. Yes, I think.
And you've got the adventures in podcasting as well. You're a chief podcaster there as well.
Yes.
You're helping coaches, facilitators and trainers. Gosh, I just about manage one podcast.
Well, that is an issue, actually. It is. I mean, Adventures in Podcasting, I wanted to turn that into some kind of business, doing exactly what you said, using helping specifically coaches and facilitators, because they still are my peers. I played with it for a bit and then I stopped, and it's now lingering there. And I'm thinking, what can I do in the world of podcasting that is useful and that people will pay me for? So that one, but I love podcasting. Yes.
I do as well. And I think I know for the same reasons as you. I mean, for me, it was about trying to engage people in the conversation, but also trying to give them value as well at the same time as talking to them and reaching out to people. I was working remotely, but there was a point where I was finding it quite difficult myself to network. So I thought, how can I do that, with people across the world? And it was accidental, to be honest with you, I think, but it kind of it works, doesn't it? It's kind of it's a nice way to just have conversations and find out about people, isn't it?
It is. I think it's especially, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't like chit chat. So I like to get into the meat of the conversation. I mean, the kind of conversation we're having now, I love having it. So the podcast gives you that excuse to go straight into it. And it's really useful. And also you can reach out to people who you already maybe have something to say to, because you've read an article of them, or like you've listened to their podcast, or they work in a specific field. So you reach out to them, and then the conversation is a conversation that you want to have. I think that's something that a lot of people pitching for being on a show, or PR agencies pitching guests, they don't understand that indie podcasters are there because we want to have certain kind of conversations with certain kind of people. So I think that's the main thing.
And there's so much going on now with podcasting. There's you mentioned, because we were talking about tools before, there's so much going on. There's so many, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of people pitching me to come on the show. Yeah. But like you, I want to have conversations with a specific type of people. And I think I think you mentioned you want to, when you talk about podcasting, you said you wanted to explore doing things more with your podcasting. Is that one of your eventual goals, is it?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to do more of, but I'm really trying to see where I fit in. So again, I thought, well, maybe I help coaches and facilitators set up their own show, but maybe that's too vague. Maybe it's something about, there's something for me about how you show up at your best in a show, whether it's with a guest or on your own. So there's something about how much you edit what you say. If you are looking after the edit, or if you're working with an editor, how much of a conversation should be or shouldn't be edited. There's something that's really interesting there. So the technical aspect of sound, there is something about the persona that we adopt. It's really interesting. If you listen to, just to have me as an example, because I know myself quite well. If you listen to me in all the different podcasts, you hear a different side of me. Sometimes it's very subtle, but it's definitely, you bring a persona to the podcast. I was going to say to the show, because you need a performance energy. So there's something about how the podcaster shows up that is also interesting to me. But I also haven't found how to help, whether it's with online courses or one-to-one help. I'm still, and it might be that I end up thinking, I just want to do a podcast. I don't want to help other people. And then that's a whole other way in which a business can go, is how do you make money from your podcast? So I don't think we can make a lot of it, but there might be a way of the content being what generates the income, rather than it being a vehicle for us to then attract people to other parts of our business.
Yeah, it's it's so many tools as well. There's a deluge of different tools and services. And for me, I don't know if this helps you, but for me, it's the consistency is the thing that I think a lot of podcasters suffer with, is the consistency, because there's so many things that are related to doing a podcast, like getting the guests, booking guests on, and then once you've made the recording, editing it, scheduling the recording, post-production, from promoting it, and then transcribing it. There's so many different, I can see why you're trying to figure out where you fit, because there's so many aspects to it. But in terms of the theatre side of things, just going back now to your early career, I'm keen to delve a bit more into that. And because, as I said, I was looking at your career whilst you mentioned I mentioned an artistic director and workshop leader. How did your career progress up until that point? And then after that, more to a more entrepreneurial side of you, how did that all sort of come about?
Well, I am totally self-made, because I have an issue, which some people could look at as a strength, but I think sometimes it gets in my own way, which is I am extremely curious, and I also like to learn by doing. So I'm very lucky that I have a lot of confidence in myself, and so I don't mind making mistakes. I don't mind how I look to others sometimes. So I learn by doing. So I actually came to London to do a biology degree, and then ended up training as an actress. I'd always loved acting, but it's one thing to love to act, and the other is to want to become an actor. So I decided, okay, let's see what being an actor looks like. Or actually, let's learn to act first. So I trained, and then during the time at drama school, I became friends with someone else, another actor who really was very entrepreneurial as well. So we set up a theatre company. So that's how it happened. Of course, while I was looking for work, I don't think, did I get any other work? I'm not sure, but I didn't wait. And also there's a whole thing of, I still have an accent when I speak in English, as you see, and I had maybe a little bit less of an accent, but that limits you as an actor, what kind of roles people might think you're suitable for. It just takes longer. I think it's possible to have a good career. But that, I thought that might be limiting. So I just wanted to do the roles that I wanted to do. It's the same story as now. I wanted to do the work I wanted to do with the people I wanted to work with in the way that I wanted to do it. And we just learned. And some was really fun, and we did some good work. We also did some terrible work at some points. And during that, I learned, I'd always kind of directed, but I'd learned to direct a bit more. So I'd always been doing my own stuff when I was little as well. I learned to teach through watching my tutors at drama school, through watching directors direct. And I really started to look at what it was like to lead a workshop. So I learned to be a theatre workshop leader as well. Again, and that was just by assisting, trying stuff out. And then I started to train other trainers as well. Also got all the other actors going, you want to learn how to run a workshop. And some people became fabulous teachers within the theatre company. So there was a lot of learning. Again, I've always liked running things, but of course you had to learn how to manage something properly. You had to learn about employment law. So I just learned everything, and I had a lot of fun learning. And that's an issue I have. And the moment when I thought, okay, there might be something else I can be doing as well as, was when I went to a conference for theatre companies, and somebody, a guy called Toby Wilshire from Trestle Theatre Company, told us about this training program they had for corporations, where they used masks and theatre exercises to train people in presentation skills, etc. So I started to look into this. I started reading about it. I went on a course for a couple of, quite a nice long course. And then I started doing it. I found people who, I ran one free session for someone. They gave me feedback. Then someone I knew said, hey, come and talk to us. And they liked what I was saying. So I did something. And I just learned that. And you can see like everything. There's something that interests me, and I learn it by doing it. And sometimes I crash, and sometimes it goes quite well. But if you don't try,
you never know, I guess, if you don't try. And it seems like you it's, I don't know, as much as you said at the beginning, your career's got different aspects to it, but it's, like I said, to me, lots of the things that you've done are related, and it seems very logical to me. Was that deliberate, or is that... No? Okay.
No, I it's not deliberate. I mean, if you look at what I'm doing now specifically as well, when I'm doing podcasting and what is it else I'm doing? Oh yeah, the training of virtual teams. These are all relatively new things. When I was going to show my age, but when I started my studying training, it was 1990. So things have changed so much, and there's no way I could see this. There was a point where everything came together even more, which is when this thing about using theatre in training, corporate training, I was actually doing team away days and leadership training using physical theatre, which is something that it's something I love. And that was merging my interest in science, in physiology, in psychology, theatre, the corporate training, the leadership, the experience. It really was bringing everything together. Now it's gone a little bit, well, actually, it's just evolved. So I think what might be happening, it's very interesting that you said that, because I think what's happening is just that we develop some strengths and interests. And even, I might have not even have realized that what I was doing was seeking, where can I do more of this? I've been doing it like this in this way, but maybe if I do that, and eventually you go, well, actually, if I do it this way, I do it better, or I feel like know what I'm doing if I do it this way. So it's very, I suppose it's quite instinctive way of shaping the career. I have to say that the voiceover has stayed all the way from, I've been voicing since 1998. I do a lot less now, so I don't have a proper home studio, and a lot of work has gone to the homes. But that also just meant that I had an income that was relatively constant, which allowed me to play a lot more. I think that's quite important to say.
So did you have like multiple, it seems like you've got multiple streams, but all kind of running alongside each other?
Yeah.
Okay. And remote work, as I said, you're a massive advocate and an expert where remote work is concerned, and training with remote work. I'm trying to sit, I could probably, when I'm looking at your various things, I'm trying to see where that begun for you. Where did that begin, and where did that begin to be important for you?
So I was looking at the leadership training, etc., and I started to just see that that people were talking about this thing called virtual teams. So I started to look into that, and so two things happened. One is, as I was looking into it, I started blogging about it, and what I found was that the pieces that were about that space were getting more attention than the pieces about normal leadership. So I thought, okay, the leadership training arena is full. I mean, there's a lot of us there anyway, in whatever aspect. But not many people were doing that, the virtual team remote work thing. And I thought, well, also, typically trainers are very people. And this thing of using technology to build teams, it's like, no, I'm a people person. So I thought, great, gap. I can go in there. I love technology. I've always thought it's great. I have no issue with it. So in my head, that's what was happening. At the same time, a couple of things happened. My father's got Parkinson's, and he was becoming more ill and more ill. So I was going more and more to Madrid. And I met my husband in Holland. So at one point, well, he wasn't my husband then, obviously. But at one point, I was going London, Madrid, Amsterdam, London. I mean, what wonderful life. Yes, it's going to be between three different places. And I was trying to build this team building leadership training business. And I thought, this is really difficult. So I started to look at what work was online. And this is when People Per Hour was relatively new. Mm-hmm. Fiverr was around, but, that's a different kind of thing. Upwork, which I didn't touch. And People Per Hour seems... So I looked for work. I wrote some blog posts. And then there was a post for someone to moderate the forum of an online leadership course, an accredited leadership course. And I thought, I can moderate a forum. And that's something that you can do from anywhere. So I did that. And then the lady was actually based in the UK. So I even met her, and there were a couple of people in the team then. And I stayed with that. And then at some point she said, would you like to run a webinar? And I said, yeah, I can run a webinar. So the lady who was in charge of the webinar program taught me how to do it. And the first webinar I ran, and it was, what was that? Go-to webinar.
Okay.
On that platform, only with slides, in the chat, talking to people in the chat. Every now and then someone would open the mic, and I ended my first session and I was sweating. Yes, because I've been so engaged and I was so into it, and it didn't matter. I felt like I was in a room full of people.
Wow.
And this is one of the things why I stayed in that space, is that some people cannot connect unless they have people around them physically. For me, it doesn't matter. Just with the chat, just with presence in the chat, I felt like I'd been in a room full of people. And so from that, then the lady who was in charge of the webinar program left, so I took that over. And then eventually I just thought, well, maybe I can do more stuff. And then somebody actually, through LinkedIn, said, I started to create an online course on leading remote teams. And someone saw it and they said, oh, could you turn that into an in-person workshop? And I said, yes, I can do that.
When was that, Pilar? About what time was that?
That was 2000, maybe 18.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. So I did a few years pre-corona of thing, and everything changed so much. So anyway, that was where the remote work came in. Is I went into the space and saw the need and just evolved.
And have you, there was a period where I went back into the office myself and kind of reflected, but has there ever been a time when you've had to do that yourself, or been in a period where you've had to sort of dedicate yourself back into an office environment again?
Well, you're gonna laugh. So I've been freelancer since for all my career has, as you probably noticed, I've been freelancing because I like to do so many things. The only way of doing that. So I had one time when I used to go into an office. You mentioned AOL Time Warner. I was helping with some of the audio there for the Spanish feed, the Spanish TCM, and that was, I think it was one day a week or something. And I'd go into the office and the studios there. The other thing is the theatre company had an office. And in fact, I remember sitting with the board of directors. The office was also an issue because we're in London. And I didn't want to didn't want to move to have an office somewhere. But we had an office at a very highly reduced rate in central London. And it was always an issue in the board, in the trustees meetings. It was always an agenda item. What's happening with the office? Because the lease was about to expire or whatever. And at one point I was like, if we don't have an office, we don't have a company.
Really?
Yeah, because that's how it was.
Yes.
That's how it was. If you didn't have that, you had no other place for people to gather. And then eventually cafes started to open up in central London, and then it wasn't as important. Yeah, just like just chains that you could have meetings in. But there was a point, if you didn't have an office, you didn't know where to gather your people to meet. And so yes, but since I left the theatre company, I started using co-working spaces, but I rarely use them anymore as well. I'm fine home. My life has a lot of, I do exercise, so I go out once for a couple of hours into the social club. It's a gym, but it's also social. And if I had an office that was really near and really comfortable, I am part of a co-working space, but it's not as comfortable as this setup. That's the only thing. But if I'd be there. We used to have this office in Rupert Street in Piccadilly. If I could have a really cheap, nice office there now, where I was super as comfortable as I was then, of course I would have it. But it's not, one thing for the other. So yeah.
No, that's. It's funny you say about the idea of if you don't have an office, you don't have a business. Because before I started. Well, no, there was a point where actually, when I was working remotely, I didn't actually tell anybody I didn't have an office because I was actually quite afraid how they would react to me.
Yes.
I had this on my business card. I had a service office, service office address, which made it look obviously as though I had I had an address, which I didn't. It was just where I gathered all my letters. But I would never tell anybody that I didn't have an office because there was times when I did tell people and they would say, basically their whole sort of demeanor and their mood towards me would change because they think, what kind of serious business person doesn't have an office?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just amazing how, okay, there's still a way to go in terms of remote work being taken, seriously, virtual work being taken seriously. But back then, it's so much different now then to what it is now, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. There's a lot of people have told me the same thing as well, that they didn't mention to their clients or potential clients. I think now that's different, which is great. Even that's been one big. Something's changed after the pandemic, and some things haven't. But I think that's changed. That actually now people know that you can run a successful business. That actually having an office is probably a choice, and I'm really happy about that. But then for me, it wasn't. It was the place where people gathered, and yeah.
So you're gathering, you say co-working spaces, but again, like me, I've got access to co-working cafes. We're in London, so you can go anywhere. But I mean, although I go out probably once a week, maybe sometimes twice a week, I'm like you. I love my home setup because it's just like so comfortable. It's like it fits me like a glove, and I can play my music in the background when I'm doing work, or put my headphones on if I'm trying to focus or whatever it may be. You can never make a co-working space as you want it to be, can you? It's kind of, it's just so, yeah. But that's me. That's just me. But I wanted to ask you, Pilar, as well. So now you're doing virtual not distance is one of your main things. Tell me, just give us an example of the kind of clients that you work with. I mean, you don't have to name them, but the kind of clients that you work in, the kind of work that you're doing. If you could, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I've ended up, some by choice, just by default, working with traditional organizations that are still trying to make remote work. I think that was always my client, actually, because I like that. I like being the bridge. I have a part of me which is very traditional work. It's a very traditional worker, and then I have the part that is the let's see what's next around the corner and let's make it up as we go along. But I like that. I've always enjoyed working with the more traditional organizations. Maybe because they're the ones that have a longer way to go. So I feel I can help them a little bit more. So within that, over the last few years, it's been everything from small teams, so very small companies, to intergovernmental organizations, so really large organizations, and some hierarchical, but maybe just because they haven't embraced the transparency that online can bring. So not because of anything, but just organizations that are where it takes a long time to do things. This kind of these seem to have been are my clients. And what's really important, I think, what I've noticed is that I just have to enjoy working with the person I'm working with, so the learning and development or training person. We really have to be on the same wavelength in some level. It's not that we agree on everything or see the world in exactly the same way, but there's got to be something there where there's such a mutual respect. And I've really seen, like recently, someone invited me to apply for to be on their books, basically, from having come in ad hoc. And I had to go through all this official thing, even though I'd already worked there a couple of times. And my contact, we did this interview, and you could see that she was asking all the questions to make me shine and stuff like that. And it's really nice. For me, it's very important to eventually see the client as a collaborator. Some of the jobs I've done, that hasn't happened. And it's been like, well, we just we just saw the world in such different ways that they didn't work. And then the kind of things I do, I think in the end, I'm just doing training. There was a time I wanted to do more consultancy, but in the end, what I'm seeing, and I'm not quite sure what I think about this, is that most organizations want you to come and do one session about something, and then that's it. And I always wonder, is that enough? Well, how much can I do in 2 hours? Yes, and the truth is that you can do a lot in 2 hours. Sometimes you might just touch one or two people and the light bulb goes off for them, and that's enough. Other times you can see that more people want to do something different after you've been with them. But one of the last pieces I did was really nice. It was a little bit longer because it was about asynchronous communication. And that's what I'm focusing on now. Because I don't know if you've noticed in the remote space, everyone was doing remote, and now we're all going, oh, okay, remote is huge.
There's so many areas, yeah.
Yeah. Now that it really exploded, some people are doing well-being. A lot of us are doing asynchronous because that's the piece that's missing now in remote collaboration for most people. So we were doing, and the client wanted me to come and do a webinar. So very traditional again, but with cameras on this time. And because that's how she thought it would land better and what people could do.
Right.
So what we did do was set up a space where they could discuss some stuff ahead of time, like in Teams. My colleague and I, who was running it with, recorded a little piece just to introduce asynchronous communication. So nobody turned up at the webinar. We had to start right from the beginning. What is asynchronous communication? So we did that, and then we created a guide to go with the webinar so that people could continue asynchronously. They might still be in that team space. I don't know what's going on, but it's that's a much more satisfying piece of work because it's got a little bit more of a chance of making a difference. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's important. And I think what I'm seeing a lot is, there's more discussions around asynchronous work, but there's still, I don't know if you're feeling this as well in terms of the online stuff. I don't know if this is a reflection of how the real world is, but there's still a lot of conversations around mainly castigating remote work. There's lots of people who are still not quite there. Obviously, there's lots in the news about bosses saying that workers should come back into the office. And are you getting sort of an impression of remote work? There's still people perhaps not taking it, as seriously as it might be taken.
So I don't know the number of the episode, but the episode that's coming out on the 11th of May, I discuss a lot of this with Maya in the 21st century work life, because this is happening now. And there's a lot of stuff happening, which is people are still working out what is good for them, what is good for the organization. A lot of the people who are making the decisions of how remote we can be, or their hybrid setup, or whether remote work is even allowed now, are people who haven't been in that world.
Yeah.
You think about what their version of remote work was. It was probably madly being in meetings all day trying to rescue the business or trying to see what do we do. So a lot of the experience of the people making the decisions is not a good version of online collaboration and remote work. So that's something we need to bear in mind. It's a shame, but it's happening, and we'll see where it all lands. And we are still in flux. Like we see companies going, yeah, people can do this. Oh, no, we can't. Oh, no, yes, we can. Or no, we can't. And in a way, sometimes you're thinking, well, they've got to try something and they've got to say something. What I think is a shame, and interestingly, we just go back to, I think it was October 2020. I did a panel thing with an organization in Spain, and they said, what do you think is going to happen how are we going to come out of the pandemic regarding remote work? And I said, well, we're going to see companies that are office first. Probably didn't use that term, but I said people who say everyone in the office. At the other end of the spectrum, we'll continue to have fully distributed companies. And then you have a whole thing in the middle. And the important thing about this that is different to before the pandemic is that now people might have a choice. Mm-hmm. Not everyone has a choice of where they work, because not everyone is that fortunate or how they work. But the people who have a choice will look for that. And if you're someone who wants to go into the office 5 days a week and you want a culture where that is important, hopefully you'll have places to go to. And if you want the opposite, hopefully there is that choice. So my hope is that, JP Morgan has said all the managers need to be in the office because this and that. Well, let's see what JP Morgan is in 10 years' time. And maybe it does really well, but everyone there has a certain way of working. The other thing I think we need to bear in mind is the reasons that people are giving are sometimes not great. I just wish they said, look, we can't make it work. Like, I think it was one of the Google guys said, I don't know how you train managers to be remote. Great. That's what we need. We just need more transparency of, look, we just think this is not working for us for these reasons, but not because you can't do collaboration, not because you can't do productivity. It's like, we know you can do all of that. It's just, look, we haven't figured it out. And we've decided that instead of trying to figure it out, we need to get on with the business. We need to continue doing this. We need to continue that. And we don't have time to explore that. So we're just going back to how it was. Okay. It's a shame, but hey ho. So I don't mind organizations saying we don't want people to work remotely, but don't say it's because remote work doesn't work.
Yes. Yeah. 100% agree. And that's, I think, probably a lack of acceptance that, the future is, there's a what's the word, sort of like a spectrum of different ways of working. And like you said, like you were inferring, is that there's not an acceptance that some people prefer to work this way and there's other people on this spectrum that prefer to work that way. And yeah, it's something that's, it's difficult. It's very difficult because I think even the idea of hybrid work to me is quite difficult. There's a challenge where hybrid work is concerned. And I can see, because when I interviewed Nick Francis a few years ago, obviously Nick Francis, remote first CEO. And I was thinking back then, when I first spoke to him, when he said to me, because obviously his theory and his ethic is around remote first being the best way for his company to work. And if you've got a blend of sort of like remote and hybrid, that's where it becomes even more challenging to keep people on board with the culture, career development, all those different things. And it was only when I started to sort of really think about how many different things that hybrid managers have to do in order to keep their team engaged, that I realized how what Nick Francis said was, it really made sense to me then. There's so many things. I mean, you have to, if you're working in a hybrid situation, there's going to be some people that may come in more than others or have more interaction with a manager than others. There's others that might not, somebody might come in a different day, or there's just so many different complexities to it. So I don't know. I can't see myself how it's going to sort of shape up. And I'm sure there are hybrid teams out there that are doing it successfully. And in fact, I'd probably like to have a couple of them on the podcast.
Well, when just before the pandemic, I think it was 2019, Gallup surveyed engagement for remote workers. And they said the highest engagement was for those, I think it was who were either 3 or 4 days not in the office. So already before then, remote actually didn't mean that a whole team was away from the office. And it didn't even mean that one person was 100% of the time away from the office. Remote then also meant that sometimes people were working not in the office. But because that was probably not that widespread, then it was just remote. So I think that hybrid already existed before, but we didn't call it that way. The other thing is that hybrid is very difficult. And one, as I'm hearing you speak, it just needs a lot more coordination and deliberate communication than remote only or office only. So people have to work a lot harder. And I'm not sure that everyone really wants to do that. And the other thing is what we're going to see as well, and this might not be very popular, I don't say this often, is that people who want to work, because there are a lot of employees who want to work in a hybrid way. It's not just organizations saying we want to see people in the office. People are saying what I want is to work a couple of days from home or 3 days from home, and I want the office. However, that means that the employers have to keep those offices ready. And not just ready, they have to be the kind of place that people, when they come in, feel welcome, blah, blah, blah. So I think at some point, and this is already happening actually, there's going to be not just forced going into the office from people who want to use those buildings, but there's going to be forced working from home from organizations that say, you know what? Doesn't make any sense. So I'm sorry if you want to come into the office 2 days a week because you want to leave the house. We don't have an office for you anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So that... And that, of course, why would you? Why would you? But again, this is, the situation we're in about it, Alex, if you think about it, is really weird because if you have the same job, I mean, I'm not employed, so, but if you had the same job in 2019 as you have now, you might not have signed up for the conditions in which you are now. You didn't sign up for that. So there's going to be a time when now people need to at some point know how their work life is going to continue with regards to that organization so that they can make hopefully a choice about whether they continue or not. But at the moment, and this is why it's so difficult, is people are like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to work from home all the time from people who were going to the office. And people who have to go to the office all the time are like, I didn't sign up for a workplace that didn't listen to what had been going on for the last years.
Yeah.
So there's,
lots of complexities.
I did a session on the psychological contract for a client because this is what's happening is everyone's unspoken contracts and what we expected from each other and from our employers have been broken. And we need to talk about it. Because expectations we had before might not be the same. And anyway, it's a huge... That's why it's so fascinating.
It is fascinating. It is fascinating. And I see it, what you just said is big as well. Having the discussions around it, the contracts and all that sort of thing. And the way it sort of plays out to me every day when I'm looking, because I look online, I look at, when I'm dealing with my clients, I'm helping to find work, for example. And like what you said, there's some of my clients who are very much about, they don't want to go back to the office. There's others that want to go back to the office, and there's some in the middle. But their lives is not made very easy by some of the job adverts that you see on, some of the job adverts you see online. I mean, LinkedIn is just one example where you got some companies saying, remote friendly or remote first or fully remote, 100% remote, all remote, open to remote. You know what I mean? It's just,
open to remote. Okay.
It's just like, what does that actually mean? So I don't know if it was you that said online, I think it might have been you, that there needs to be sort of a definition for what do you mean by remote work? Because I think now even somebody like, who is it? I think, is it GitLab? I think they call themselves all remote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's confusing in its... I'm not saying that they're confusing, but I'm saying all these different definitions confuse people. And then the people that write the job descriptions and the adverts, who perhaps weren't that good at writing adverts anyway to begin with, are now trying to tempt people by saying, "Oh, with this, that, with the other." But it's confusing me,
Yeah. I think, just thinking back to whether I think I might have been talking about hybrid specifically.
Right.
Because yes, remote first, full remote, blah, blah, all of that is confusing. I think that hybrid is that times 3 times confusing because hybrid means nothing. I mean, hybrid can mean, and also I think we're still talking about location. What is this? What does hybrid mean? Does it mean hybrid choice? Does it mean that you have a choice? Does it mean that you're working with in an environment where there's so much independence that everyone does what they want? Because some people might not want to work in a team where everyone can choose where they work because that might not be what they like. So, yes, I think that I think at some point, hopefully, the hybrid first, I don't know, hybrid, the 3-2, hybrid autonomous, hybrid dictated, remote dictated, working from home dictated, co-working enabled. We can think of lots of definitions.
There is so many definitions, and that's But hopefully, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how this is all going to sort of pan out and how it's all going to sort of settle itself down. But I think, it'd be interesting to see what things happen. I think somebody said, who was it that came on the podcast and was saying to me that this year and the beginning of next year is going to be the year of sort of get people getting back into the office, or businesses saying come back into the office. And he said that as of, maybe tail end of 2004, beginning of 2005, that it's going to be more around, things are going to settle down, and then we're going to see a bit more definition in terms of the companies that are more comfortable to say fully remote or whatever, it's remote first. But it'd be interesting to see what the future holds, but we will see.
We shall see.
And for you, Pilar, because there's so many avenues in which your career can go down. You're a freelancer, as you said, and you've done a variety of things, but as I mentioned, all interconnected. If your career, if you visualize your career as like a staircase, how far are you along that? How far are you up that staircase?
Well, if I were 20, I would say at the bottom, but I'm not 20. Mm-hmm. So I am shifting how I look at my life anyway. I want to do more writing. I'm learning to write fiction as well. There's just a lot of stuff that I'm trying to do. And I am at the beginning of where I want to be in 10 years' time, if I get there, because I want to have a lot more sources of income. And right. I want to productize a lot of what I'm delivering now. I really want to do that. In fact, if you or anyone listening knows of a way of delivering audio courses that is easy, where you can charge, not through a podcast, not through Teachable, right. Then let me know, because I think that I would love to do that. In fact, I've been creating with a colleague, hopefully we'll get it out at some point this year, an audio course about asynchronous. And I think I would like to do a lot more of that. I want to create audio courses that people can listen to and reflect on away from the computer. So I want to do that. I want to do more writing and find what ways of income I can create as a creator, as an artist. I'm also, I want to go into the self-help arena, because I've been doing some doodles with a Happy Daisy, which is where she's got this message of slow down and smell the coffee kind of thing. And so, and again, I'm learning how to draw comics. There's a whole new way of, I read somewhere that work is how we express ourselves. And that has been so true for me. And I think I'm now ready to just make it about self-expression rather than anything else. So I am at the bottom because I am shifting. Right. I'm completely shifting. And I think I'm ready to leave some parts of my professional career behind. I'm not ready to leave some others. Mm-hmm. So I think if it were a staircase, I'm definitely at the bottom, and I'm crawling a bit.
No, there's more to come. I wouldn't say you're crawling at all. I think the message I got from that is lots more to come, and I think there's so many different avenues. And I think, audio, I think, is going to be is big as it is now, but it's going to get even bigger. And back to the idea of remote work and async work, there's still not complete clarity on how that's all done. So if you can deliver that in an audio course, then you could be onto something there.
I hope so. And it's pitched. What's really interesting, so without going off on another tangent, what's really interesting at the moment is there is a lot, like this week, there's a lovely guy who's about to publish with a mainstream book on async. So I got that to have a look and give an endorsement. Someone else also got in touch with me and said, can you have a look at this stuff online, which is all about async? And then I saw someone else post on LinkedIn, I've got this new guide about async. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out for fully distributed, mainly software developers, that kind of, you mentioned GitLab, the GitLab aspiring, those companies that aspire to be like GitLab. There's a huge piece for organizations like the ones I've been working with, which are the traditional ones, which are not going to use half of those terms. They're not going to do all that stuff, but need to make their remote work more sustainable. So that's the space I'm looking at. And I think our course is very basic, but I think it just touches on all the things that some people have not had time to think about. So, and audio, I'm really excited about finding a way. There's still not a way of delivering audio as courses, but I think it's a matter of time before someone says, here's an app.
Yeah, because all you get really is you've got audio books, but that's not really a course, is it? And then you've got, LinkedIn have started to test a lot of audio now, so that kind of is a clue as to what's to come, maybe.
Yeah, there's and to be honest, I haven't looked at how that would work there, but the LinkedIn courses and stuff they're closed, so you need to be invited to deliver them, which I suppose I could look into. And they have been looking at audio and even podcasts and stuff. One of the online course platforms now has come up with a mobile app. That might be the solution, because then you can have your PDFs in there as well for reference, and there might even be a community feature in it. But you don't need to feel it can be okay delivering audio through that. So maybe that's the answer. But I agree with you that audio became very big, has become really big over the last 5 years, and I think we're going to see more. So yeah.
Maybe you could create your own platform. Maybe it could be a new thing. Because when I'm trying to rack my brain, I can't think of anything that just delivers audio.
If any developers out there, because I did, and I was talking to someone at some point who was creating something, but I don't know what's happened. People come and go. But yeah, I think that I want to create something that I know will work. And that if a learner has a problem, that I'm not the one they go to. So I want a platform where they have a customer service, so I don't have to deal with that. So creating something new might be a bit scary, but let's
watch this space.
Watch this space.
We'll be watching this space, definitely. And well, I mean, it's been great having you on again, Orti, but Pilar. But I just wanted to ask you finally, because we've talked all about work. What do you do when you're not working? What do you do? You gave us a bit of a clue in terms of some of the things, like the gym. You mentioned the gym. Are you fitness? What other things do you do when you're not working?
So lots of stuff, because something I've been really trying to do over the last year was to spend less hours at the computer and work less, actually, and just so. The reason I want to work less is so that I can enjoy it more. So I don't feel like I'm all the time working and catching. I was like, no, I want to do things well. So I actually take Fridays off, but work on Saturdays. And by work, I mean editing podcasts, which is so much fun. It's like being in a room with my friends, listening back to conversations. So I love it. But I did that, and it's very interesting. If anyone has any flexibility, I found that because I take Friday off, Saturday is great because I have a lot of energy for that last day. Then I take Sunday off completely, and then I start again on Monday. I do Pilates, which is great for, as a voiceover, it's great for the breath, something I discovered after drama school. And it's great for posture. It's great for strength. It's like, if anyone is thinking about, we're all sitting up now. So Pilates, I do a dance class. I used to do Zumba, but it's too cold in the gym where I do it. I do a dance class because I love dancing, and this is just like a fun dance class. And then I do another kind of Pilates thing. And then I started doing yoga, which I really like. I really like the teacher. She's like her style reminds me of the physical theater tutors. Really, just wonderful. I read a lot. I love reading. Every morning I read at least 20 minutes, and then throughout the day, if I can, fiction. I also read a lot of nonfiction, and I watch a lot of television. I love crime dramas. Yeah.
Crime dramas
are great, especially the foreign ones.
What's the latest crime? What kind? I mean, I don't get to watch a lot of TV, but the last crime, I don't know if this counts, but the last crime drama I watched was Breaking Bad.
Oh, I did never watch that. I know it was big, but I didn't watch that at all.
I don't know if that counts as a crime drama, because I'm not that into TV, as I said.
I don't.
Maybe not that.
Yeah. Well, if anyone listening does like a crime drama, well, we don't have Netflix because we were going to sign up to Netflix.
Oh, I see.
And we were going to sign up, and we bought the Roku, the thing to go online. And Channel 4 in the UK has so much stuff. And then we also still record from television into a digital recorder. There's just so much stuff. We don't need Netflix.
Yes.
But there's a lot of like Channel 4 in the UK has lots of Scandinavian drama, lots of French crime. It's just so great. And then I also like cozy mysteries because that's what I'm writing. So I also watch like things like Private Eyes, or I was watching today reruns of Castle. I don't know if you heard of
I've not seen that. No, what's that about?
Yeah. Castle is just, they're now in season 17, but I used to watch it when it was season 1. It was about a crime writer that joins the police, or that is shadowing someone in the police. So it's just like really easy cases, just very cozy dramas. You don't really see blood, or there's no real violence. You just, they just solve the case. And then, you always know that the person who did it is whoever if they have a relatively high-profile actor in the episode, that's the person.
That's the one that did it. So it's not difficult to work out who did it.
So I love that. I love watching television. I really, really do. So yeah, those are the things I do. But work is fun. So
well, it's good when you get to that point where work is fun. There's not many people that I speak to who have reached that point. And I think everybody, what I'm going to do is leave your details in the show notes, Pilar, because I think, and that's the reason I wanted you back on the podcast as well, because I know that I get a lot of inspiration from what you do with the podcasting in your work. So I know that other people can as well. And I just wanted to say thank you again for being on the podcast. And we'll certainly be looking out for what you do in the future. And maybe there's a third episode in the making at some point.
That'd be great. Can I say something really quickly?
Yes,
I've realized through adventures in podcasting, and especially talking to Michelle Ong, who's a lady who has steam-powered podcast talking to women in science. And when we were talking, we thought one of the things that came out that really struck me that I hadn't thought of before was when we podcast, as podcasters, of course, we connect with our audience. So we create a space for ourselves. Then we bring a guest and the guest wants to communicate with the audience, and that is very important as well. But what we also do is we create a space for the guest when we're doing interviews to stop, and we create the space for them to talk about their work, to reflect on their stuff. And your questions have been really amazing. So thank you, because I really, really enjoyed that. It's just such a you created a really nice space for me. So I hope the listeners also enjoy it.
I loved it. It just feels like a great conversation to me. And it's, like I said, I hope people can get some value. I'm sure they can. And put your details in the show notes. But yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot for you to come. It sounds like you're involved in a lot of things, but as I said, I'll be keeping an eye on things. And yeah, hopefully speak to you again soon, Pilar.